So Shift Up is getting backlash again. And if you've been following all of the news surrounding Stellar Blade Blood Rain's controversy, then none of this should really be surprising. Now that Shift Up is self-publishing Blood Rain instead of relying on Sony as the publisher, it feels pretty clear that Stellar Blade was never built around trying to please everyone, and with Blood Rain, Shift Up seems even less interested in backing down. Ever since Stellar Blade Blood Rain was revealed at Summer Game Fest, the game has been surrounded by a lot of controversy. And to be fair, I do understand part of the backlash. Blood Rain seems to be taking the story in a different direction than a lot of people expected. And for the fans who are hoping to see Eve's story continue directly after the first game, that's obviously going to be disappointing. I mean, I kind of had the same reaction at first. I assumed that when Shift Up said they were continuing Stellar Blade, we'd get more of Evie, but it turns out we're going to get a completely new protagonist named Evie. And clearly, a lot of fans are not fully on board with that yet. I mean, look at some of these comments on X. Protagonist design is awful. What a downgrade from Eve. Wished Eve's story continued since so much could have been expanded on, but like how the protagonist's fighting style is more confrontational and head on, so they caved in and not using Eve because she was attractive. No thanks. If it's so stellar, then where are the blades? Gooner slop. And here's a good one. Is this not a child? So, yeah, not everyone is pleased with the switch between protagonists, and then you have all your other crap like this right here. So, some of the same stuff from the first game that we saw, but hey, you can't please everyone, and I'm still gonna buy the game. What about you? And like I said, I kind of get some of the backlash. Some of this is just normal fan disappointment. People got attached to Eve, and they wanted to see her come back. That part makes perfect sense to me. And at the same time, though, I also think that there's a reason Shift Up made the decision in the first place. And I remember one of the complaints being that Eve was bland, and I'm not gonna lie, I agree with it. She was kind of bland, but from what I remember, the CEO of Shift Up said that that was on purpose to make Eve more relatable, kind of like a blank slate of sorts. And it seems like the team is fully aware of that too. Hyung Kim, CEO of Shift Up, has said that while making the first game, the team struggled with whether Eve should stay more of a blank slate for player immersion, or whether she should have a stronger, more distinct personality. And after seeing how players responded to the first game, it sounds like Shift Up decided they could push further in that second direction. So with Evie, the goal doesn't seem to be just replacing Eve, for the sake of it at least. It sounds like Shift Up is deliberately trying to create a protagonist with a stronger identity this time around. Not just in terms of how she looks, but in terms of her personality and role in the story. And honestly, I can't lie, that makes me a lot more open to what Blood Rain is trying to do. Again, I liked Eve, and I don't think Shift Up is done with her character just yet, but I'm also interested in seeing what Evie adds to the franchise if the studio is serious about making her a more defined lead this time around. But like I mentioned earlier with one of those comments, and this not being the first time this has happened with Stellar Blade, the craziest part of this controversy is the fact that a lot of people are saying that Evie looks like a child. And I wish I was exaggerating, but we've seen this with the original Stellar Blade too. Now, I will be fair, there is one specific shot where Evie does look noticeably younger than she does in the rest of the trailer. But younger doesn't mean she is a child. Just look at some of these comments. Why was she given the face of a preteen? Or you have, sorry, not my type, I'm into girls, whatever that means. Or you have, you made her look too much like a kid and it looks weird in my opinion. Or look at this one. No thanks, the face looks like an androgynous preteen attached to an older female body. Very problematic to put her in some of the amazing outfits Eve would wear. Bro, did you make this game for Trump and his friends? This girl looks like 12 or 13. What is wrong with you people? Disgusting. And just seeing some of these comments, that's where this entire conversation starts to feel ridiculous to me. Hyung Kim was actually asked about Evie's appearance, and his explanation makes it pretty clear that this was a deliberate design choice. He says Evie was intentionally made shorter and younger looking, but they still wanted her to come across as tough in combat and have a cool, stylish presence. So this isn't some hidden gotcha where Shift Up accidentally made Blood Rain's new protagonist look a certain way, and now everyone has to pretend not to notice it. They know exactly what Evie looks like, and they designed her that way on purpose. IGN even asked Kim directly whether he was worried about people looking at Evie the wrong way because of how young she appears. And his response was basically, if you actually play the game, you won't think that, and I have to agree with him on that. He said that once players see Evie's personality, the way she talks, the way she fights, they'll understand that she's meant to come across as a lovable character, not whatever weird accusation people online are trying to turn her into. And honestly, that's a big reason why I have a hard time taking a lot of this backlash, outrage, whatever you want to call it, seriously. If your criticism is I prefer Eve's design, or I'm just not sold on Evie yet, that's completely fair. But when the conversation immediately jumps to Evie looks like a child and people start acting like Blood Rain crossed some kind of moral line, I think that says more about the people pushing the outrage than it does about the game itself. I feel like a lot of people making the loudest accusations are the exact same people that were not going to buy Stellar Blade Blood Rain in the first place. We've seen this pattern over and over again with female characters in games. A new character gets revealed, people turn them into the center of some online morality argument. Everyone acts like this is the biggest issue in gaming, then eventually the outrage dies, people move on, and the internet finds a new character to obsess over with instead. And honestly, I'm not going to take any of this seriously. I'm not going to listen to it. I think it's actually pretty funny. So if you're planning on buying Blood Rain, as I am, just buy it. Go ahead and buy it. And like I said, we've seen this happen time and time again. Saw it happen with 2B, Bayonetta, Eve, Evie, Tomb Raider. A lot of it just seems like the same cycle happening over and over again. But what if I told you that wasn't the only thing that was going on with this game? The drama was getting so ridiculous that people were actually trying to report the game to Visa and MasterCard. Apparently, some people were so upset over Evie's design and the fact that Shift Up might make the game's outfits even more revealing that they started trying to report the game to payment companies in hopes of hurting the game's sales before the game even got a chance to come out. And here's the thing, whether you like Evie's design or not, that's insane. Completely and utterly insane. Because at this point, you people aren't trying to criticize the game anymore. And I do mean you people who don't even play games and were never going to buy Stellar Blade or Stellar Blade Blood Rain in the first place. You're actively trying to mess with how other people can even play the game at all. The Stellar Blade drama was already a mess, but trying to bring payment companies into it is one of the most ridiculous things I've seen come out of this entire situation. Go outside, touch grass, and maybe try playing the game before you get it canceled. But with all of that out of the way, the best thing that could have come out of all of this is the fact that Blood Rain is being self-published instead of relying on Sony. Already that's telling me that Shift Up wants more control over where Stellar Blade goes next. That could mean more freedom over what platforms the game ends up being on, more freedom over how the sequel is handled at launch, and just more freedom in general to steer the franchise in the direction they actually want without having to play it safe for a publisher. And that really does matter because if Shift Up really wanted to avoid controversy here, they could have done the easiest thing possible. Bring Eve back as the main protagonist, and market Blood Rain around the same character that already made Stellar Blade blow up in the first place. But they didn't do that. Instead, they introduced Evie, they made her intentionally different from Eve, and they've stood by the decision even while people online have been losing their minds over it. A lot of people aren't really thinking about is the fact that that doesn't mean Eve is gone forever either. Shift Up has already hinted that Eve and Evie have some kind of connection. And if that's true, then Blood Rain probably isn't replacing Eve so much as using Evie to take the story in a new direction before eventually bringing those two characters together. So when I look at all of this, the self-publishing, the decision to move away from Eve as a sole focus, the way they're standing by Evie's design, and the fact that they clearly know that this is upsetting people, I don't think I see a studio panicking or trying to backpedal. I see a studio that knows exactly what kind of reaction this game is getting, and honestly, I don't think they care. They know some people hate the direction, they know some people wanted Eve back, and they know Evie has become the center of a whole new wave of discourse, but instead of walking it back, they seem more committed than ever to do what they want with Stellar Blade, whether people like it or not. And if Eve not returning was the biggest backlash this game was getting, I'd understand that. But a lot of the backlash towards Evie feels very manufactured and doesn't feel genuine at all. You don't have to like Evie more than Eve. You don't have to be sold on Blood Rain yet. But if the goal was to pressure Shift up into backing down, changing course and making Stellar Blade safer, I really don't think it's working. If anything, Blood Rain looks like the exact opposite. It looks like Shift Up is taking more control over Stellar Blade more than ever before, and making it very clear that they're gonna push this franchise wherever they want, regardless of who gets mad about it. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on all of this craziness, and are you gonna buy Stellar Blade Blood Rain when it drops? Peace.